Stop thinking fulfillment comes from wealth. Aristotle explains why. Let's start with a question that's going to stick with you for the rest of this video. Why do you want wealth? Not just a little bit of money to pay your bills or enjoy life, but real wealth, financial freedom, luxury, the ability to do anything you want. Now think carefully. Is it because you believe wealth will make you happy? Or is it because you think wealth is the key to fulfillment, the secret to a life well lived? If you answered yes to either of those, you're not alone. Most of us have been taught subtly and overtly that money is the gateway to fulfillment. Our culture glorifies success stories of billionaires, influencers, and moguls who seem to have everything they could ever want. But here's the truth: that belief is a trap. It's an illusion. And Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers in history, understood why over 2,000 years ago. Aristotle argued that wealth is not an end in itself, it's a means to an end. Let me repeat that, because its huge wealth is not the goal, it's just a tool. A tool for what, though? According to Aristotle, it's a tool for achieving something much deeper, what he called eudaimonia. Now, eudaimonia doesn't have a perfect translation in English, but the closest word is flourishing. It's the idea of living a life that is truly fulfilling, one that's rich in meaning, virtue, and purpose. Here's where things get interesting. Aristotle believed that the good life, the truly fulfilling life, doesn't come from external things, like money, fame, or possessions. Those things might make life easier or more comfortable, but they're not the source of true happiness. Why? Because they're fleeting. They don't satisfy the deeper, internal needs of the human soul. Think about it. How many times have you bought something you really wanted, maybe a new phone, a car, or even a house, only to realize a few weeks later that it didn't make you as happy as you thought it would? That's because external things can only provide temporary pleasure, not lasting fulfillment. And yet, we keep chasing them, thinking, maybe if I get a little more, I'll finally feel satisfied. But Aristotle would say we're looking in the wrong place. Let me ask you this: when was the last time you felt truly fulfilled? Not just happy, but deeply content, like your life had meaning and purpose? Was it because of something you bought? Or was it because of something deeper, like a connection with someone you love, an achievement you worked hard for, or a moment when you felt aligned with your values?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Aristotle believed that fulfillment comes from living a life of virtue, not wealth. Virtue, in his view, is about becoming the best version of yourself, cultivating qualities like courage, wisdom, generosity, and kindness. It's about living in a way that's not just good for you, but good for the people around you. And here's the kicker: virtue is something you develop from within. It doesn't depend on external circumstances. You don't need to be rich, famous, or powerful to live a virtuous life. But here's where Aristotle challenges all of us. He said that living a life of virtue isn't easy. It requires effort, discipline, and, most of all, self-reflection. You have to ask yourself hard questions. What kind of person do I want to be? What values do I want to live by? And most importantly, am I willing to sacrifice short-term pleasures for long-term fulfillment? So here's the real question: if wealth isn't the key to fulfillment, why do we keep chasing it? Why do we fall into the trap of thinking, if I just had more money, everything would be better? The answer has a lot to do with how our society works, but also with how our minds work. And in the next part, we're going to break that down. We'll explore why wealth feels so seductive, why it rarely delivers on its promises, and what Aristotle would say about the modern obsession with money. The illusion of wealth: why chasing money leaves you empty. We live in a world that constantly equates wealth with success. Everywhere we look, we're bombarded with images of what a good life is supposed to look like: luxury cars, massive mansions, designer clothes, exotic vacations. Social media amplifies this, turning wealth into a performance. You see someone posting a picture of their new yacht or a $200 steak dinner, and suddenly you feel like you're falling behind. It's as if there's an unspoken rule: the richer you are, the happier you must be. But let's pause for a second. Why does wealth feel so seductive? Why does it have this magnetic pull on us? Aristotle would say that it's because we confuse wealth with what he called the ultimate good. You see, every human being, whether we realize it or not, is searching for one thing: the ultimate good, the thing that will make life complete. For some people, that might look like happiness. For others, it's meaning, love, or fulfillment. But here's the mistake: we think money is the shortcut to that ultimate good. Let's unpack that. Wealth promises a lot of things: security, freedom, comfort, even status. And in some ways it delivers. Money can solve certain problems. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet, having more money can absolutely improve your quality of life. Aristotle wouldn't deny that. He recognized that basic material needs, food, shelter, health, are essential for a good life. But here's the catch: once those needs are met, money stops being a source of lasting satisfaction. Why? Because wealth doesn't address the deeper struggles we face as human beings. It doesn't solve loneliness. It doesn't give you a sense of purpose. It doesn't teach you how to be a better person. And it certainly doesn't protect you from suffering. In fact, the more wealth you accumulate, the more likely you are to experience new forms of stress: fear of losing what you have, pressure to maintain your lifestyle, or the emptiness of realizing that money didn't bring the fulfillment you expected. Here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine you woke up tomorrow with $10 million in your bank account. What would you do? Maybe you'd quit your job, buy a house, travel the world. But after the initial excitement wore off, what would your life look like? Would you feel more fulfilled? Or would you still wake up with the same questions, the same doubts, the same longing for something deeper? This is why Aristotle saw wealth as a means, not an end. It can help you achieve certain goals, but it can't give your life meaning. True fulfillment, he argued, comes from within. It comes from how you live, not what you own. And this is where the modern obsession with wealth goes off the rails. We've been conditioned to think that money is the solution to all our problems, when in reality, it's often just a distraction from the real work we need to do: the work of becoming the kind of person who can live a good life, regardless of external circumstances. Aristotle believed that the key to fulfillment lies in what he called the golden mean. This is the idea that virtue exists between extremes. For example, courage is the balance between cowardice and recklessness. Generosity is the balance between stinginess and wastefulness. When it comes to wealth, the golden mean would be using money wisely, not hoarding it out of fear, and not spending it recklessly in pursuit of status, but using it as a tool to support a virtuous life. So let me ask you this: how are you using your wealth, whether it's a little or a lot? Are you using it to cultivate the kind of life you truly want, or are you letting it control you, dictating your values and priorities? These are hard questions, but they're the ones that matter, because at the end of the day, wealth isn't inherently good or bad, it's neutral. What matters is how you use it. In the next part, we're going to take this even deeper. We'll explore one of Aristotle's most profound ideas: that true fulfillment doesn't come from what you acquire, but from what you become. We'll talk about how to shift your focus from external success to internal growth, and why that shift is the ultimate key to living a meaningful life. Becoming over having Aristotle's case for inner growth. Let's get to the heart of it. Aristotle believed that true fulfillment doesn't come from what you have, it comes from who you are. This is one of the most profound ideas in his philosophy, and it's just as relevant today as it was over 2,000 years ago. Think about it for a moment. Why do so many people with enormous wealth still feel unsatisfied? Why do we hear stories of billionaires struggling with depression, addiction, or a lack of purpose? It's because fulfillment isn't about accumulation, it's about transformation. Aristotle argued that the ultimate goal of life is not to acquire more, but to become more. He called this process living in accordance with virtue. To him, a meaningful life is one where we strive to cultivate the best version of ourselves, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others and the world around us. This is why Aristotle placed so much emphasis on character. He believed that who you are, your values, your habits, your relationships determines the quality of your life far more than what you own. But here's where things get tricky. Modern culture pushes us in the opposite direction. We're taught to measure success by external markers: how much money we make, what kind of car we drive, how many followers we have on social media. These things become our identity. We think, if I just had that promotion, or that car, or that level of fame, then I'd be happy. But Aristotle would say we've got it backward. He'd argue that these external markers are distractions from the real work, the inner journey of becoming a virtuous and fulfilled human being. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you thought about what kind of person you're becoming? Not what you're achieving, or what you're buying, or how you're being perceived, but who you are, deep down. Are you someone who's patient, kind, courageous, and wise? Or are you someone consumed by stress, comparison, and the endless chase for more? This isn't an easy question to answer. It requires brutal honesty and self-reflection. But Aristotle believed that this kind of introspection is essential for a good life. Why? Because fulfillment comes from alignment, when your actions, values, and character are all in harmony. And here's the kicker: you can't buy alignment. No amount of money can make you more patient, or loving, or wise. These are qualities you have to develop through consistent effort and intention. Now, let's connect this to the idea of wealth. Aristotle didn't think money was evil, it's neutral, remember? But he did believe that wealth becomes dangerous when it distracts us from our true purpose. It's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of material success, thinking it will solve all our problems. But in reality, this pursuit often pulls us away from the things that truly matter: our relationships, our personal growth, our contributions to the world. Here's a simple metaphor to illustrate this. Imagine you're climbing a ladder, working hard to reach the top. But when you finally get there, you realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. That's what happens when we chase wealth without thinking about what it's for. We spend years, sometimes decades, climbing, only to discover that it didn't bring us the fulfillment we were looking for. So how do we shift our focus from having to becoming? Aristotle would say it starts with asking yourself one question: what kind of person do I want to be? Not what kind of house you want to live in, or what kind of car you want to drive, but what kind of legacy you want to leave behind. When people think of you, how do you want them to describe you? Generous? Wise? Compassionate? Brave? Once you have an answer, the next step is to align your actions with your values. This is the process Aristotle called practicing virtue. It's about making small, consistent choices that reflect the person you want to become. For example, if you want to be generous, start by giving your time or resources to someone in need. If you want to be courageous, take a step towards something that scares you. These small acts may not seem like much, but over time they shape your character, and your character shapes your life. Let me ask you this: what's one small choice you could make today that reflects the kind of person you want to be? Maybe it's reaching out to someone you've lost touch with, or spending time on a passion project, or simply taking a moment to reflect on your values. Whatever it is, do it. Because every small act of virtue brings you closer to the life you're truly meant to live. In the final part, we'll bring it all together. We'll explore how to use wealth as a tool for living a virtuous life, why contribution is the ultimate measure of fulfillment, and how Aristotle's wisdom can help us navigate the challenges of modern life. This is where everything clicks. The wealth of giving, why fulfillment comes from contribution, not possession. Let's wrap this up with a truth that Aristotle would have considered the pinnacle of wisdom. Fulfillment isn't about how much you can take from the world, it's about how much you can give to it. Wealth, when used correctly, is not a badge of success or a measure of your worth. It's a tool for creating value, for contributing to others, and for living a life of purpose. And think about it, what's the point of accumulating endless riches if it doesn't make the world or even your own life better? Aristotle believed that true happiness lies not in selfish indulgence, but in selfless contribution. To live well is to live in harmony with others, to use what you have, whether it's money, time, or talent, to make a difference. This is why he argued that wealth, when hoarded or misused, corrupts the soul. But wealth, when directed toward virtuous ends, can be an incredible force for good. Let me ask you something: how much of your wealth, whether material or intangible, are you using to make the world better? And by wealth, I don't just mean money. I'm talking about your skills, your energy, your compassion, your ability to uplift the people around you. Are you spending these resources only on yourself, or are you sharing them in ways that create lasting impact? Here's where Aristotle's brilliance ties everything together. He believed that the highest form of happiness comes from living a life of excellence, or arete. And excellence isn't just about personal achievement, it's about living in service to something greater than yourself. When you focus on giving instead of taking, on contribution instead of consumption, you align your life with a deeper purpose. And that's where fulfillment lies. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine two people with the same amount of wealth. One spends their money entirely on themselves, buying bigger houses, faster cars, and more luxurious vacations. The other person uses their wealth to support causes they care about, to help friends and family, to create opportunities for others. Which life do you think feels more meaningful? Which person will look back at the end of their life and feel a deeper sense of pride and connection? Here's the irony: when you focus on giving, you often end up feeling wealthier than when you focus on taking. Contribution fills an emotional and spiritual void that material possessions never can. It reminds us that we're part of something larger, that our lives matter because they touch the lives of others. But this isn't just about generosity, it's about responsibility. If you've been fortunate enough to acquire wealth, whether that's financial, intellectual, or emotional, you have a responsibility to use it wisely. Aristotle believed that with privilege comes the duty to lead a virtuous life, to ensure that the resources you have are used for the common good. So how do we apply this in modern life? Start by asking yourself, what do I truly value? What kind of impact do I want to have? And then take action. Maybe it's as small as helping a neighbor, or as ambitious as starting a foundation. The scale doesn't matter. What matters is the intention, the decision to use what you have to make life better, not just for yourself, but for others. In the end, Aristotle's wisdom is clear: fulfillment doesn't come from the things we possess, but from the lives we touch. Wealth is fleeting, but the legacy of how you use it can last forever. So stop thinking fulfillment comes from wealth. It doesn't. Instead, ask yourself, how can I give more? How can I live better? And how can I become the kind of person who leaves the world richer not in money, but in meaning?